All right, team. Thank you so much for joining me here today. Again, I'm so excited to see some familiar faces, and we've got a new guy here with us today, too. So let's start with our usual round of introductions. I want to hear a little bit about who you are, what you do, and what you're excited to bring to the conversation today. Josh, you're our returning veteran here. Now we've done a couple of these sessions with you. So why don't you kick us off?
Hey, Jess, it's great to be back and both with you and the audience. So thank you so much. And super excited to be here today with Ian and Raul from F5. And we're going to discuss how companies are embracing multi-cloud architectures and how to secure and manage them. So super excited to be with you all today and yeah, ready to jump into it.
Yeah, perfect. So my name is Ian Deneau. I'm a product marketing manager at F5 on our distributed cloud services team. Excited to talk about some of the security implications and challenges facing organizations as they work within hybrid and multi-cloud app environments.
Hey, folks. This is Rahul. I work for F5 Distributed Cloud as well as a product manager, and I drive the secure MCN and Edge product families within F5 Distributed Cloud.
Awesome. Lots of good stuff here. Lots of good things coming towards our audience. And I know they are really pumped up and ready to dive in. So we're going to get things rolling. And I love starting with a good look at trends. Where are we going? What are we seeing hot on the table right now? So, Ian, I'm going to kick this first one to you. What trends are you seeing, especially when it comes to customers out there that are using hybrid and multi-cloud environments?
Yeah, I think what we're seeing, in our conversations with customers and the surveys that we do in our state of application security report, that hybrid is here to stay. Organizations are expecting to, and now and in the future, operating multiple app architectures to support both legacy monolithic apps and modern microservices based apps across a variety of different architectures and environments. That's the data center, the cloud, multiple clouds, private clouds, and out to the edge. In our, the last few years, respondents in our survey indicated that, roughly 85% in the case of 2023, they were using two or more environments. So this is a trend that is consistent. And I saw this quote and I thought it was very timely in an IDC Future of Enterprise survey. And it said, the cost and complexity of supporting multiple generations of infrastructure and applications is the number one barrier to achieving digital resiliency goals. So those goals could be security, performance, experience, etc. So regardless of the scenario, and where organizations are in their cloud adoption and app modernization, infrastructure ops security teams face significant operational complexity when networking and securing their applications across clouds and hybrid environments today.
Yeah, great points, Ian. I think we're seeing certainly companies mature in their use of cloud architecture. And I think, if you take a look at the traditional customer journey to cloud, it usually starts with the first phase being cloud adoption as a lift and shift strategy, which is leveraging high availability on scalable platforms, right? That's kind of the first step. The second is application transformation. So refactoring the applications that you deploy and build to leverage containerization, so Kubernetes, for instance, so they can tap into elasticity for the applications so they scale out easier and provide better user experience. And then the third phase is typically the adoption of public cloud for artificial intelligence and analytics to drive new capabilities and efficiencies with machine learning and today, very popular, large language models. So we're seeing enterprises are deploying applications and data where it makes the most sense to balance their cost, their scale out, performance capability, and of course, access to cloud innovation technologies. So, we see, for instance, retailers leverage public cloud for their web and mobile application scale and performance, while deploying on-prem container infrastructure for things like payment processing, inventory control, security applications. Applications where low latency is really key. And Ian Good stats that you brought out. We're seeing the same, right? I think a recent survey from Flexera found that 87% of organizations have a multi-cloud strategy, and 72% are using a hybrid approach. So the same as you, right? We believe that hybrid cloud and multi-cloud aren't going away, and therefore we want to make sure that our customers can embrace what makes the most sense for their business.
That's so important, and I like that, both that point of it's not going anywhere and it's growing rapidly, but making sure that you're using things in the way that makes sense for your organization. And one of the things that I think is always going to come up is that word security, and I know we're going to spend a lot of time talking about this today, infrastructure and security. But I want to start with a little bit of that step back. So Ian, I'm going to ask you to give us a bit of a definition. How do you actually define what is secure multi-cloud networking?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's really in the name, but from our perspective, secure multi-cloud networking is the practice of connecting any app or data environment securely anywhere. Right. Again, like we said, on premise, public cloud, private cloud, across clouds, even out to the edge. So organizations are moving to the cloud and looking to adopt the cloud for a variety of reasons, picking some of the best features and services for specific workloads. And complying with regulations as appropriate. So keeping things in private cloud or on-prem. So there are a variety of reasons why this happens, whether it's performance and scale that they're looking to achieve, disaster recovery. They need to have different environments so that they can fail over and fall back, cost efficiencies, and or specialization, right? Optimizing infrastructure for specific functions and workloads, avoiding vendor lock-in, and innovation. Gaining access to new features and capabilities that they just don't want to or don't have the resources and expertise to build themselves. So organizations need and want options. And most aren't going with one architecture like we alluded to, and thus as applications change and modernize, and more environments are adopted, they need to secure and find efficient ways to connect all of these environments and services together, and this can be very difficult.
Perfect. And Ian, just to add to what you said, essentially the why behind the secure multi-cloud networking need is really, as apps are getting everywhere, enterprises are looking for agility and also not compromising on on their security posture. Um, Therefore, the reason for a secure multi-cloud network is quintessential. Essentially, building a framework for a consistent networked environment where you can deliver any application or an API and protect them with a consistent sort of operational model is highly desired.
That's that constant balance, right, between being agile and flexible and getting that sort of quickness that we are looking for, but also balancing along with security and not destabilizing everything that we're building. So, okay, I want to get into that a little bit and kind of how we're managing this infrastructure. So, Ian, I'm going to bring you back into this because I'm curious if you can give us a little insight into what you're seeing and how organizations are connecting and managing multiple clouds and hybrid environments, and especially when we're looking at these distributed application workloads and data in the environment today.
Yeah, this can be tough, and I think a lot of organizations are struggling, um, and in a variety of multiple clouds, and have data and workloads all over the place, if you will. They're connecting these things, a variety of ways: direct connects, express routes, private networks, MPLS, internet, SD-WAN, and IPsec connections. To provide access, anywhere for their users. So it's a variety of elements and connectivity providers. And they're stuck figuring out routing and dealing with IP overlap, not to mention the security elements of all of that, all the users, the connections, the application, etc. And every environment is different, and different capabilities, different control planes, and think about what that does from a visibility standpoint. Whether it's performance visibility or security visibility, how are you able to really understand how everything is performing and doing? So there's multiple operational points, and there's really no consistency. So it can be really hard to deliver an optimal, consolidated operational experience to create those efficiencies and unify, have a unified feature functionality. Associated with the networking of applications and the security of your application. So, it takes a lot of time and energy and money to do this in that kind of patchwork fashion.
Yeah, good points, Ian. Kind of covered a lot of ground too. Talking about the connectivity aspects. How are you deploying and what frameworks? I think from a Google perspective, coincidentally, when I mentioned Kubernetes helps companies tap into planet scale architectures, it also helps their applications be more portable, right? So we're seeing companies leverage containers to allow their applications to be packaged up with all their dependencies and makes it easier for them to be deployed and moved between different environments. So if you think about how do you get that logical framework where you can manage across multiple cloud environments, that's a good first step as you start to think about it. So take, for instance, a financial services company. They might use Kubernetes to manage their distributed trading platform across multiple cloud providers. And Kubernetes would allow them to automatically deploy, manage, and scale the trading platform across those different environments. And Ian, as you mentioned, right, we're seeing that transition from traditional MPLS networks to SD-WAN, right, leveraging the high bandwidth and dynamic links to try and meet the needs of today's distributed mobile organizations. So certainly a shifting landscape, and I think it's important that you try and figure out what is the fabric that you're going to use to help you be more effective when you manage across the multi-cloud environment.
That's such a great question, and I think the shifting landscape is something that is top of mind for a lot of people because if we all lived in a vacuum, we could probably create exactly what we want. But we live in a the world that we do, where there's things flying at us all the time, and the world is changing, and the ground is changing underneath us, and the tools we have are changing all the time, and so it's just a lot. It's a lot, and that complexity is really exciting, and I think it's a lot of what we love about what we do and these conversations we get to have, but it also can be a little overwhelming. So, Rahul, I think I'm going to ask you to give us a little bit of clarity here. And I'm wondering if you can help us understand where some of this complexity is impacting organizations. And really, in particular, what are some of the issues that we're seeing come out of the current approach? What are these approaches actually creating in terms of problems that organizations are having to overcome?
Yeah, Jess. I think customers are really struggling with these disparate environments and operationalizing them. We hear customers take, on average, especially larger enterprises, take upwards of 6 to 8 weeks to publish an application, and that really is in contrast to the whole promise of digital sort of transformation and all of the agility promise. The impact really is with all of the issues that Ian and Josh brought up with cobbling together various solutions. This really, the first level impact is a large delay in bringing projects online. Um, Even when the projects are brought online, the second layer is the mean time to resolution of any issues. So the operational burden on teams is immense. There are multiple vendors, multiple ops silos working together, figuring out what's going wrong where, again, is a huge burden. And as most of the world is moving towards SaaS, SLAs are essential component, and enterprises are struggling to keep those SLAs up. So the high mean time to resolution is a big impact, and ultimately high costs now, because you have multiple vendors which you need to manage and pay, and larger operational teams that are needed to bring all of this together. So these really are the top line effects of having sort of a complicated solution where the need is really to operate a disparate sort of environment and applications therein.
Hmm. And when you have this sorts of complexity, as we know, that is one opportunity for risk to set in. And unfortunately, the more complex, the more opportunity there is. So as we're kind of digging into that a little bit, Ian, I'm wondering if you could give us an idea, if we could look at that security side of things, and how customers are really approaching security when it comes to this sort of shifting and complex landscape that we're discussing.
Yeah, and I alluded to this a little bit. You have that kind of disparate security functionality and enforcement. So organizations need to look to try to unify that. Across environments, with a patchwork of different vendors and native solutions, and software versus hardware. Oftentimes organizations are left with efficacy and service parity issues across their environment. So their services lack consistency. So different firewalls, different web app firewalls, different layer 4, layer 7 DOS capabilities across these environments. So leads to inconsistent policy. Not to mention managing all of this, the operational complexity and burden of that, multiple control planes. And often all of these solutions, in many cases, require a unique skill set and expertise and experience required to learn and manage these tools, the nature of these environments. And then that leads to visibility gaps. And so you can't protect what you can't see. And so that mean time to resolution, as Rahul was talking about, comes into play from a security perspective. Is you have disparate silos in network and performance metrics and security events and alerts. So how do you reconcile all that? How do you actually understand if something's a confirmed attack or a threat versus some performance or networking issue? Often organizations across these disparate environments lack the insights to understand all of that. So those are just some of the kind of the key gaps or security concerns that organizations are faced.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's a decent amount of concerns, and I'm hoping that we can dig in a little bit in a moment here to what they can do about some of those concerns. One of the ways that I know that we can take action is by looking at our infrastructure. Let's kind of get back into our infrastructure discussion here. Rahul, what are some infrastructure and connectivity considerations that organizations should have on their radar, especially when it comes to deploying and connecting apps, services, and data, and especially and this has come up a few times already in our discussion, when we're looking at these distributed environments. So when we're talking about on-prem data centers, and then maybe public and private cloud, maybe edge, all the things that come into this conversation, how are you seeing folks address that?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think I deal with this almost every day. I think the thought process behind this is really think in terms of first principles. The way we look at this, and we sort of advise our customers, and more these things are resonating, is the first level problem is to solve the operational complexities. Now, what I mean by that is the first piece of that puzzle is to figure out a collaborative platform where your infrastructure teams, your network teams, your security teams, your developer teams can come in and can collaborate on sort of a common goal. The common goal is to connect your disparate environments. On that disparate environment, figure out where what application needs to be delivered, and then secure those applications there, and then operate on a common frame. So that avoids various ticketing, finger pointing, sort of all of those issues go away. And within that collaborative platform, try and establish a common policy layer. That's where you program your disparate environments, as well as you get visibility and alerting. The second big pie is really to build deep into the visibility layer. Visibility is not just pretty dashboards. It's really actionable insights where security operators, network operators can take action. That's the second layer. So the first piece is within your environments, really solve for the operational complexities. Once that's established, the second part of the problem that is worth solving is the interconnectedness problem. This is where customers today are relying on VPN technologies. They're relying on a lot of complicated routing. And as it turns out, it's sort of in the current era with so many disparate environments, simple problems like IP overlap, etc., are not easy to be solved. So you really need a solution that can really operate at a fabric level where, regardless of which environment is underneath, the solution understands the complexities within and doesn't expose those complexities over to users. And through that, creating a service network that extends across all of your environments that you're operating within, solve for that is sort of the second order problem that is worth solving.
I like that. I was laughing a bit though, because I like a really pretty dashboard. So I like when all my visibility looks really nice. But I think so often, and you really hit on the the need to be connected and collaborative, and I really like those points. And of course that's going to feed into reducing some of the security risks. And so Ian, back to you. You're our security guru today. What should we have in mind? Same kind of idea when we're structuring for security.
Yeah, I think consistency is key, right? So that's consistency in a variety of different elements, from visibility to tooling, so on and so forth. So as much as organizations are able, and we're having a uniform security decision on tooling and capabilities, so that you have that uniformly across all of your app environments, allows for service policy mobility. So the ability for an organization to have like a baseline common policy, and deploy that everywhere, if necessary, and then the ability to customize that based on the data, the application, the environment. So that's definitely critical. Having that consistency in tooling would provide a better the ability to have that centralized control and visibility, a single point of control and management, and visibility into all of those environments, essentially from one console. The other thing, another consideration is around the automation, right? And so the ability of these tools, or this tool or platform, to integrate with developer workflows where necessary, so that SaaS and software solutions should be in consideration, so that organizations can scale easily, and they can be deployed within the speed of development and within the flow of the pace of business, really, right? So they're not a hindrance, right? So I think those are some key considerations from a security perspective.
I like those a lot. And I think automation sometimes allows us to keep up the pace of innovation while still maintaining that consistency that you were talking about. And so you can kind of hit both, because those can feel a little oxymoronic sometimes. But I like that connection point. Okay, so Rahul, I want to ask you, how does this all compare to SD-WAN?
That's a great question. I think SD-WAN as a technology really helps solve a few things really well. I think the first piece is the whole WAN optimization piece, where expensive MPLS circuits, etc., are no longer required. SD-WAN is a great technology to solve for that. And then getting into segmenting your networks. As you're operating maybe a PCI environment, you don't want your regular development workloads to talk to something that is processing credit card information. So SD-WAN is a great technology to segment your networks and extend connectivity out into the branches. I think that's where SD-WAN really shows its strength. But SD-WAN does not play into solving the challenges within a cloud environment, where your workloads may be across two VPCs, and you need to then figure out your network security posture across those VPCs. I think that's the boundary that SD-WAN has, is essentially it solves problems to the cloud. and then you need solutions that will solve for complexities within the cloud as well. And just to go back to the previous question that you were asking, the fabric, as in, should really be something that will encompass all of these environments, and SD-WAN can be a part of the Uber solution as building out the secure multi-cloud network. This fabric really, the essence of it is really to provide an abstraction over all of the physical constructs. Maybe it's a data center, maybe it's an edge location, or maybe it's cloud networking constructs. A secure multi-cloud networking framework should really abstract all of those complexities. It shouldn't matter where things are. But one of the things that we have started to see is um, this concept of service networking. Now, SD-WAN is a pure play networking construct, where it operates at L3. The benefit of that is that it's an easy sort of plug and play model. You get started really quickly. But the disadvantage with that is that there is a lot more surface that is exposed, and it requires protection. And that's where network firewalls and all of those are baked in. And then as you onboard applications, the network firewall has to get a pinhole created so that the application traffic sort of starts flowing. This is where service networking comes in and is a critical component of a secure multi-cloud networking architecture. The idea is you have apps that reside on within various environments. Once you establish the secure multi-cloud fabric, you don't need to really create network connectivity at layer 3. All you can do is all you should be able to do is app 1 in Google Cloud should be able to talk to app 2 that is running on your on-premises environment without exposing the entire L3 network. And this concept of a service network that extends across all of your environments is a robust way of ensuring seamless connectivity while ensuring the attack surface is limited to only the application that is exposed. And that's a big thing to have in the security toolkit, along with all of the security technologies. Starting with a reduced surface is a great first principle as well.
That's a great point, Raul. I think SD-WAN, to your point, right, it helps to take us to a more dynamic network versus having the fixed circuits and the MPLS environment that was managed, where we really still had a perimeter type architecture with backhaul of traffic. But what we see then is with applications shifting to multi-cloud, hybrid cloud, and of course high degree of SaaS usage, it's becoming more important for today's organizations to really rethink their approach to securing applications. To your point, and the way that users access them. So SD-WAN, of course, gets the connectivity built in for branch to cloud and data center, but we also have to think about how do the users then get access into those environments and those applications. And we're seeing zero trust become more common as the means to secure not only application to application communication, but also user access to application. So where we previously managed that perimeter with backhaul, now each interaction needs to be authenticated, context aware, and of course provided with least privilege access. So to your point, it's a modernization of the way that we're approaching the architecture and the security layers that protect those applications.
Okay, I think you're actually shooting us in a really great direction here, Josh. And it's when we're talking about zero trust, we're talking about an approach, right? And a collection of systems and tools and policies and all part of that holistic strategy. So I think for a lot of people, zero trust comes down to looking at best practices. And a lot of times when we're talking about these infrastructure changes, we're talking about trying to get those best practices and at least taking those steps that we can, rather than oh cool, check and done, right? Which, as much as we wish it was all that simple, it's not. So I want to explore some of those best practices a little bit. And what I'd like to start with, and Rahul, maybe I'll ask you to kick us off here, is looking at some of the best practices for ensuring policy consistency and very importantly, compliance. And especially when we're looking across clouds and applications and how this can be applied to APIs, because of course that does feel pretty complicated, especially that compliance stuff, microservices, the microservices that are included in our apps, but maybe when we're working with those third-party suppliers or vendors.
Yeah, just absolutely. I think we touched base upon the need of having a operational pane of glass that is normalized across your environments. It shouldn't care whether you're operating in one public cloud versus the another, or operating in an edge environment or a data center. It shouldn't care. So that's where you start. Now, once you start there, you really need to have a consistent policy that can stretch across your networking layer, application layer, security layer, so that there is a common language that can be established across teams. But it is not sufficient to have that. The policy itself needs to be intent driven. And that's really required because the applications underneath and the environments underneath are very ephemeral. Josh, you talked about Kubernetes and the portability of these applications. So none of these environments at this point in time are static. It used to be the case probably a decade or so ago, where you could have an Excel sheet that had IP address mapping to applications, and you could then drive policies out of that. It's no longer the case. So the reason why we need an intent-driven policy that can operate with things such as using public cloud labels, etc., and then realize that intent and program the underneath constructs is extremely important. And then a step further is, yes, you have a policy that is operationally consistent across environments, which is intent driven, that can go and realize your intent. But then I think, Ian, you brought this up, where you can't protect what you can't see, therefore you can't enforce what you can't see as well. So discovery is again a very critical component of your sort of policy portfolio, and this is especially true when it comes to APIs, because out of all of the things, yes, there is discovery important for things like your resources within a public cloud VPC, but the level of changes that happen to APIs is far greater. So knowing what APIs your applications are exposing, and then within those APIs, what's the level of security sensitive exposure that each of the APIs have, is a very important asset to have in order to then go back and then enforce security on that. So discovery in general, and especially discovery in terms of what APIs is your application exposing across wherever your applications are deployed, is critical.
Oh man, Rahul, you had so many great points, and I'm running through them again in my head because I want to make sure I'm remembering all of them. So, acting with intention, and maintaining that consistency, and then the discovery. And what I also love about that discovery is the iterativeness of that process. That that reminder that this is not set it, forget it, let it collect dust on the shelf, but needing to be constantly revising. And so I would assume going back through that cycle again, revising with intent, and maintaining those consistent policies. Those are great points, Rahul. Thank you. And I want to keep exploring that security side of things a little bit. So, Ian, I'm going to hand things over to you for a moment. And I'd love it if you could give us some insight into how organizations can start integrating security, and really and particularly at scale, and especially when they're trying to avoid impacts to delivery, when you're looking at slowing down IT operations, and really, and sometimes cost of hurting, is that end user experience. So how are we bringing security in all the way through without slowing those key factors down?
Yeah, so I think it needs to be embedded into that fabric that Rahul was talking about. Something that's SaaS or software based, that's scalable, right, and agnostic to deploy and support, the variety of different environments where applications and data are residing. The API driven element, um, for integration into those workflows. And then also the marrying or the combination of network level security and firewalling, and application security are critical. And especially for like external web facing applications, not only WAF and DDoS, but bot defense. And then Rahul touched on API security. So being able to have the capabilities to support internal and external applications and APIs across environments. The other thing that Rahul was alluding to around intent-based networking and policy enforcement are critical, right? And so this has a security element to it as well. Um, you know, being able to enforce intent-based networking and security across all sites and workloads, to be able to classify clients and users and that are connecting to all of these environments, understanding all of the app and network communications, even in the cloud, so that policy can be built around all of that. The machine learning to monitor clients and workloads and identify potential anomalies, secure access, and verification of trust between the services and the clients. Um, across environments, and then contextually grouping users and clients and their applications, right, and all of the applications. So and then finally, I think having a capability to it's hard to commit to a single vendor solution, but organizations or capabilities, security tools, sorry, need the ability to integrate easily with SIMs and streaming of logs and event data to support open telemetry and that all-up view that security operations and IT teams can investigate and digest. So those are some of the key
Okay,
considerations.
this is a perfect segue into where I kind of want to start to. We're going to bring this conversation home a little bit here, and get into the meat of the changes and the approaches that organizations can really start to bring into their teams, because obviously we talk about this all the time, and you guys have brought this up a couple times already. The need for communication and collaboration and that interconnectivity between departments, avoiding those silos. So let's talk about that. How can IT teams, DevOps teams, cybersecurity, that DevSecOps umbrella, how can they all come together in order to make sure that the necessary changes are actually being made in order to gain control over this multi-cloud environment? And Rahul, I'll ask you to kick us off, and then maybe Josh, if you want to chime in on that as well.
Yeah, of course, Jess. I think we've covered this in bits and pieces in our chat today. I think it all starts with a collaboration platform that sort of normalizes all environments. Doesn't matter if you're running in a public cloud or edge or on-prem. It normalizes that, and then it normalizes functions as well. So normalizing environments, think of that as a horizontal normalization. And then normalizing network functions right from network connectivity. So connect your edge to public cloud 1 to public cloud 2, public cloud 2 to on-prem. That's your networking. And then provide application delivery services on top. So help me connect to salesforce.com. Help me deliver this private application to a consumer in a private fashion. Do sort of the load balancing plus functionality on any of these environments. Then deliver application level security services, and then operate them across your DevSec NetOps teams. That's really a simple connect, deliver, secure, and operate as a framework across all of your environments. That's really needed. Without any, this sort of breaks down all walled gardens. You don't need tickets. Teams don't need tickets to sort of make progress, and this really enables agility without really requiring a very large team. And that's extremely important, especially in today's climate, where all of our customers are looking to do more, while they don't really have the budget to have a huge team to support their ambitions.
Yeah, good point, Raul. I like the kind of the framework you gave us there on, deliver, secure, operate aspects. I I think in my experience, what we're typically seeing are kind of five common steps that companies are aligning around to safely embrace multi-cloud environments. I think the first is for IT, DevOps, and cybersecurity to come together. To your point, right? Establish a set of goals and objectives for that multi-cloud environment, and then ensure that everyone's working towards kind of the same thing as far as understanding of where the risks exist, and then how do you secure for those. Um, Once they've got a common set of goals, then kind of second, we're seeing IT, DevOps, and cybersecurity really needed to focus in and develop a shared understanding of those risks and challenges, and then that helps them create a plan to mitigate those risks in that environment. Third, once you want to try and get visibility, implementing a cloud security posture management tool really helps to provide that visibility into the environment, and then can provide that multi-cloud security tooling, right, to help across the teams to mitigate against some of the things that we see most common, security misconfigurations when you're starting to embrace public cloud or multi-cloud. How do you make sure that you've got the right protections and um, you know uh, limited access controls for those environments? This helps to improve the overall security of that environment, and then also, reduce the risk of data breaches in the environment. Fourth, we see automation really come into play, and I think you both have touched on this, as we've kind of gone through. But I think when it comes to you've got ephemeral environments with containers, you've got multiple different environments as far as how applications are deployed. So how can your security operations teams take care of visibility, right? We mentioned SEMS earlier. Secondarily, then how do you make sure that you've got vulnerability scanning in the environment? Patch management needs to be automated, and then how do you do incident response when a vulnerability or threat has been identified? And if you can automate those components, then that really frees up your IT, DevOps, and cybersecurity teams to focus on more strategic tasks in the environment. And then lastly, I think one of the most base and important components is just educate and train. Right, this is a different environment that you're now moving into. Uh, each of the environments are not necessarily the same. So if you're trying to use first-party tools plugged into some of the broader multi-cloud tools, you have to figure out how those plug in properly so that you're getting the right indicators in the environment. And then secondarily, just make sure everyone's aware of the risks, knows how to mitigate them, and then can align on what that process looks like.
Ah, Josh, I love that point so much. I love the human element. Always a fun discussion. And your reward for having such a great point is I'm going to leave the microphone with you. I'm going to ask everyone to kind of go around and give us sort of a final takeaway, a final thought. If you wanted everyone out there in the audience today to walk away, thinking about mulling over one thing, what would that be? Josh, if you want to kick us off, and then we'll go Rahul and Ian.
Thanks, Jess. I'll try to stay within the realm of one thing, but uh, I think key takeaways for today. Well, first of all, it's been great being here with Ian and Raul to discuss, how the landscape is shifting. We're seeing, a wide adoption of cloud architectures, and I think, we still have workloads that are heavily divided between on-prem, data centers, and public cloud. And some studies are showing that still only 12 to 20% of workloads are deployed in public cloud at this point. So hybrid cloud and multi-cloud, to our opening points, they're here to stay. And primarily that's because enterprises, have legacy workloads that have to reside where they are, or they have data requirements, as far as security concerns. But they're becoming smarter about how and where to deploy those critical applications in their environment. If an application requires low latency, you put it closest to the user. If you need to leverage planet scale and innovation like AI and analytics, you deploy in a hyperscaler. And as these shifts occur, leveraging a framework for application portability, is incredibly important. And then aligning across your DevOps and SecOps teams becomes critical as we start to see things like zero trust deployed. To really take a look at how do you secure application to application communication, and also end user access to application. So, a lot of things to think about, of course, but I think the reality is that multi-cloud's here to stay. How do you embrace it, leverage it for your own benefit, and then how do you make sure that you secure it and have good visibility to it?
Awesome, Joshua. I think my key takeaway is almost on the same lines. The trends that we've seen is apps are being modernized. They are being placed in various environments: hybrid, multi-cloud, edge, and now they are communicating mostly over APIs. If you think about it, APIs are really the new routing layer. It's no longer a router. It's like APIs are the new router. Now, all of this is done really with the promise of business agility, right, to drive digital transformation. But we know that our ops teams, enterprises, and the ops teams within enterprises are struggling to keep up with this promise, and that's really where the secure multi-cloud networking framework really comes in. And a key takeaway would be to really have a solve for the complexity that enterprises are really dealing with day in and day out. Having this secure multi-cloud networking framework of having an operational collaborative platform, really helping them connect any environment seamlessly, and then delivering and securing applications and APIs on that connected environment, regardless of where you want to deliver them. Maybe you want to deliver it to the internet, maybe you want to privately deliver it to your edge branches, etc. A mechanism to seamlessly deliver and secure those applications, and finally operate that environment, whether it's your NetOps team, your load balancing team, your security team, your application security team, etc. All of them operating at a platform level. Having the ability to do that with a secure multi-cloud networking framework is quintessential for enterprises to succeed. That's really the key takeaway, I guess, that I have for today.
Perfect. Thanks, Rahul. So my key takeaway is, regardless of where, an organization is in their modernization, their cloud adoption journeys, with this partnership with Google Cloud and F5, we can provide organizations the tools, to optimize the connectivity and security of their multi-cloud and hybrid environments and those workloads specifically, allowing them to deliver more consistency in operations, in performance, in security, and deliver unified visibility across any network and app infrastructure.
I love that. I was going to save this question for the onion, but since I think you kind of gave us a really nice little segue there, so I'm going to ask you now. For somebody that is really excited by this conversation and wants to jump in with F5, what would you recommend as that first step?
Yeah, I think, and I think we'll include this link as part of the webinar. Is you can visit f5.com/GCP. That's a good starting point to learn about our solutions and partnership with Google Cloud.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah, we'll make sure we have that up for everyone and in the handout section so you guys can all visit that. Okay, so now we've got some questions coming in. I've been watching them come in this whole time, and everyone's so eager to join in this conversation. We are very short on time, so we don't have enough time to get to all these questions, but I'm going to try to pick a handful of these, and we'll get to as many as we can. You guys ready to jump into some audience Q&A?
You bet.
Yep, let's do it.
All right, well, let's start with this one because we started our whole webinar talking about trends. And so we got a question here. And Josh, I think I'm going to send this one to you first. What trends are you seeing with AI, and especially with your customers and challenges that NetSec DevOps are facing in order to enable their enterprises?
Yeah, good question, Jess. And thanks to the audience member that asked it. I think there's two sides to this coin. We're certainly seeing artificial intelligence, machine learning, and generative AI being leveraged at this point, from some of the components and tooling that Google is starting to provide. But we're seeing a lot of our security partners like F5 they have already predictive algorithms that are able to sense things like anomalous user behavior or being able to detect bot type activity. But I think what we're seeing now is sort of this advanced capability where uh, groups are creating the ability to use AI as a service to start to attack organizations, to do credential scraping, to gather information on those organizations. And so I think as the attackers are becoming more effective and leveraging some of the newest technology that they have available to them, we also are trying to counter that, right? As we take a look at how do we partner with security companies like F5 to make sure that we're ahead of those attacks. And so we're seeing, companies start to embrace capabilities where AI is built into how can they protect and defend against what appear to be bot type attacks. Also, how can they then get smarter about identifying vulnerabilities, detecting those quicker, and then getting to automated remediation, right? We talked about automation a little bit earlier, and I think that's a key component to how can you make sure that you take out some of the toil from your teams and then focus on the high value things where your teams need to focus. So AI can, really help to address a number of things. It's kind of defense at the beginning, detect, automate, and then basically make your teams more effective with the tools that they have.
Awesome. Anything you guys want to add, Rahul or Ian?
Yeah, I'd like to add something that we've been seeing with the customers that we're talking to. I think fundamentally, if you look at what AI does, AI apps, essentially, uh, it boils down to there's a model which is data hungry. And data is residing in various silos. So the first order problem to solve is how do we securely make this model get access to data which is residing in various silos. That's one part, and that squarely fits in the realm of networking teams, and they have to figure out this portion. The second piece is now the model is exposed to either another set of applications or users that are coming in, and let's say ChatGPT, there is a query interface that is exposed to the internet. Now, how do you do that? How do you expose this model out to your users, which can be actual consumers or private consumers, public consumers, or applications, end of the day? And once you have exposed that, that's again squarely fits in the realm of the secure multi-cloud network framework. And once you have exposed it, you need to protect it. And especially AI models, because they're expensive to run. So how do you protect it against threats such as bots? You don't want a bot coming in and running a repeat query from a 10 million sources that's just going to drive your costs so high that you can't sustain that any longer. How do you protect against bot? How do you make sure that there is no sensitive data that is being exposed at runtime? You can build your models and train your models and test your models, but when you deploy them and you have public consumers coming in, you need to ensure that you're not leaking any sensitive information, etc. So that's where the application security suite, starting from your DDoS protection, coming into your application layer with bot protection, putting in the API limits, and then having the API discoverability and security features where sensitive information, etc., is not leaked, has to be part of sort of your framework as you're looking to enable your enterprise's AI initiatives. While you have your AI and AI engineers, data scientists working on the AI problems, the security teams, networking teams, are hard at work in solving this problem. Data access, exposing the AI models out to consumers, and then protecting this end to end.
Yeah, Rahul, I'm going to move us into our next question just because we are getting a little close to the end of our time here. But I think that this kind of plays in really nicely to what you were just talking about. So this is a big, long question, Rahul. So bear with me for a second. But I love that where it starts. One of our audience members says, "Our network, cloud, and app scope have grown out of control. So how can we get a handle on this to counter the exponentially expanding surface area at risk for potential cyber attacks while also keeping an eye on the overall health and performance of the environment?" And then they added this subtext: right now, these are two disparate activities. Is it best to bring them together somehow? And if you think it is best, I told you this was a long one, how do I do that, Rahul?
I think the answer is simple: secure multi-cloud networking. You need to think of connect, deliver, secure, operate. You connect your environments, deliver apps on top, secure everything, and operate it with a single platform. I think then you have the ability not just of agility, you have reduced threat exposure, and you no longer need to expose your network across your environments. You can simply do app to app connectivity with service networking, and that will really be a solve for all of the disparateness and the complexity that arises because of that.
Okay, I'm going to try to sneak in one more question before I move to that last question, though. Josh or Ian, was there anything you wanted to add to that last?
I like Raul's answer was almost the same or less than the length of the question. So well done.
It's what we're going for here. All right. Well, this one is a short and sweet one. And Ian, I'm going to ask you to chime in on it because you were kind of brushing alongside some of this throughout our conversation today. So I'm going to ask you to dig in a little bit deeper. We have a question here. How have others made the transition to the cloud without impacting their current network and security operations? Ian, what do you got for us?
Yeah, I think, we definitely are seeing customers who have gone to the cloud and then are figuring out, you know, you know, and maybe repatriating some of their workloads. So maybe they went too quick and they weren't quite ready. So, for customers who are kind of at that beginning stage of moving workloads out of their data centers or private clouds to public cloud and beyond, um, I think starting small and going back to what Josh had kind of laid out that framework, find a project, a workload, an application, a data set, and then around that, I'm going to steal from Josh's framework. That simplifies the scope, and you can really then work on what are the common goals you're trying to leverage around that project, understanding the risks, challenges, and needs of that project. Figuring out the networking and the security and the management plan. Okay, what are the automation elements that I want to or need to put in place to make that all come together? And then you can think about the people aspect, the training, the enablement, the expertise that you may need to go out and hire or develop internally to move forward. So we've seen organizations do this. We had one organization who actually, I think the project bubbled up through the data science team or the big data team. And they had like this data lake that they were processing transactions, and essentially they have a bunch of a network of partners that are sending them requests, and they have to go through and process all of these requests and then respond back. So they were maintaining these data lakes in their data center, and now they were looking to, for scale and performance purposes, move those to the cloud. And so we were able to help them build a standard security framework and networking framework, around that just one project that then they can expand as their workloads move to and from the cloud, across clouds, and to the edge. So it really just takes that one project, and I think biting it off in that small chunks like that will allow them to build that muscle, learn. Yeah, so that's I think some advice that I would give.
I think that's great advice. And I think especially throughout the conversation today, you guys have given us a lot to think about, a lot of the considerations and things we should have on our radar, but also then some places to actually get started and take action, and maybe change, whether it's a change in approach or mindset or structure or tools. There's the most important thing being to take action. And I love that. And I want to thank all three of you for giving us so many wonderful action points today. I know the audience has really gotten a lot out of it. I wish we could keep going. I'm really enjoying this roundtable discussion we're getting to have, but we are going to have to leave it there. Ian, I'm going to ask you one more time. Tell us that website that everyone should head to.
f5.com/GCP.
Perfect. All right, team. Well, again, thank you for another awesome discussion. It has been so much fun chatting with all three of you.
Thank you
Likewise.
all.
Thanks so
Thanks,
much.
team.